In the middle of the 2026 U.S.-Israeli war with Iran, military bases are taking drone fire and key aircraft are sustaining physical damage in the region. But the White House is fighting a secondary battle far away from the desert, a battle to control the public narrative. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth recently complained that the press is fixating on American casualties and economic fallout rather than highlighting the military successes. This frustration escalated when President Donald Trump demanded that the government revoked the licenses of major TV networks over what he called fake news. The specific trigger for this threat was a Wall Street Journal report detailing a strike on 5 U.S. aircraft tankers in Saudi Arabia. The president explicitly denied the report on social media, claiming 4 of the 5 planes had virtually no damage.
Hours later, Brendan Carr, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, the independent agency that regulates interstate radio, television, and broadband, issued a public ultimatum to broadcasters. He warned them to correct course on their war coverage or lose their licenses to operate, which raises a massive constitutional question. In the midst of a modern war, can the U.S. government actually pull the plug on a major television network simply because it dislikes the journalism? The broadcast system is legally decentralized. The FCC does not issue licenses to massive national networks, only to individual local stations. Broadcasters operate under a public interest mandate. However, the First Amendment expressly prohibits the Commission from censoring broadcast material. Any attempt to stretch that public interest mandate to punish news coverage faces a massive new roadblock, a 2024 Supreme Court ruling called Loper-Bright. For decades, federal courts automatically deferred to government agencies when interpreting vaguely written laws. The Loper-Bright decision ended that practice. Now, judges exercise their own independent judgment, stripping agencies like the FCC of flexibility to create sweeping new rules out of ambiguous statutes. Legally speaking, Carr's threat is a bluff. Under today's strict administrative law, the FCC lacks the explicit congressional authorization required to penalize a network over its editorial content. But an empty legal threat from the federal government is still dangerous. If we look closely at American history, silencing the press is a deeply ingrained tradition during times of armed conflict. In 1798, warning that war with France was imminent, President John Adams signed the Sedition Act. This law effectively made it a crime to criticize the government, and Adams used it to jail competing Republican newspaper editors and shut down their printing presses. During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln authorized military commanders to shut down more than 300 Northern opposition newspapers. Editors who published disloyal speech were jailed without a standard trial, under martial law. Facing a skeptical public during World War I, Woodrow Wilson built a massive propaganda engine to generate enthusiasm for the draft. He also pushed the Espionage Act of 1917 through Congress, creating a legal mechanism to silence anyone who criticized the military. Utilizing that act, the Postmaster General banned over 100 publications from the mail, including the revolutionary journal The Masses. Its editors were prosecuted simply for expressing an anti-war stance. This pattern of suppression survived well into World War II. Franklin Roosevelt's administration ordered the prosecution of individuals under the Espionage Act for publishing articles that criticized the Allied war effort or the president's foreign policy. For the first 170 years of American history, the First Amendment effectively had a wartime exception. When the nation prepared for battle, the government routinely managed to censor domestic dissent. That centuries-old cycle finally broke during the Vietnam War. Daniel Ellsberg, a former Defense Department employee, leaked a massive trove of classified documents to the New York Times. When the paper began printing excerpts, the Justice Department immediately sought a court injunction to stop publication, citing a threat to national security. The leaked documents, a 7,000-page secret study known as the Pentagon Papers, proved that the government had consistently deceived the American public about its operations in Vietnam. The resulting legal battle reached the Supreme Court. The justices ruled that abstract national security fears do not justify prior restraint, a legal term for government action that prohibits speech before it occurs. The presses were allowed to run. Contrast that history with the 2026 conflict in Iran. Today, broadcasters are shielded by a post-Vietnam legal culture that protects critical journalism, combined with a modern Supreme Court that actively restricts federal agencies from expanding their own power. The freedom to openly criticize a president's war strategy without fear of being shut down is a relatively young invention in the United States. While the FCC's current threat to broadcast licenses lacks legal teeth, it proves that the instinct to silence critics never disappears entirely. It just waits for a moment of complacency.